Welcome back to 10-Minute Prophecy, where we go through the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation in bite-sized chunks. We hope that this journey through Bible prophecy has been enlightening, whether you are new to prophecy or have studied prophecy in the past. As always, if you haven't seen the previous presentations, please watch them as each prophecy builds on each other. We are going to continue on Daniel 11. We hope that you are excited to continue on this journey and see how God predicted the world events precisely and accurately. Like we said previously, this prophecy has very few symbolism and can be titled the literal prophecy because of this. In this section, we are going to discuss the prophecy of the fall of the papacy and the rise of atheism, and by extension communism, and some of the theories that came from that, including evolution. So last time, we left off at verse 32, and will now continue on in verse 33. We encourage you to read the verses with your Bible. Verse 33 gives more description of the papal power. And those of the people who understand shall instruct many, yet for many days they shall fall by sword and flame, by captivity and plundering. Here it identifies what the papal power will do to those who do not agree with it. When we look at history, we find that the papacy killed by the sword and burned at the stake those that disagreed with it. It was a persecuting power, as we studied previously. This passage also hints at the long period of papal persecution against those trying to uphold the truth and guide others in righteousness. Here, Gabriel only places a general statement of time, but we find the many days more succinctly defined in the scriptures as a time, times, and half a time in Daniel 7 verse 25, 12 verse 7, 1,263 days in Revelation 12 verse 6, and 42 months in Revelation 13 verse 5. All these descriptions point to the same time period, which is 1,260-year period of papal dominance, which started in 538 AD, as we studied previously. Verse 34 continues more points. Now when they fall, they shall be aided with a little help, but many shall join with them by intrigue. The Bible here shows that those who were persecuted and killed by their martyrdom would cause others to start rising up against the papal power. The Reformation led by Luther and his colleagues provided the support that was predicted. German states backed the Protestant movement, protected the reformers, and curbed the harsh persecution by the Catholic Church. However, as the movement gained traction and became popular, the Bible says, "But many shall join with them by intrigue." During the Reformation, many people joined not out of genuine conviction, but for superficial reasons. Some were insincere, seeking to benefit personally, and used flattering or friendly words to advance their own interests. Here in verse 35 we see, "And some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them and to purge, and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed." Although persecution was slightly diminished, the Bible prophesies that persecution would worsen from time to time, and this was especially true in England. The country's religious landscape was unstable, shifting between Protestant and Catholic rule depending on who was on the throne. Queen Mary, known for her violent reign, was a fierce opponent of Protestantism, leading to the deaths of many in her brutal persecutions. It's logical to conclude that when this period began, the Church of Rome's power to punish heretics, which had led to so much persecution, would be taken away at the time of the end. When is the time of the end? If we calculate from 538 AD, when the papacy gained full strength and persecuting power, we come to 1798 AD, when the papacy was overthrown. We will discuss which power overthrew the papacy in a bit. The reference to papal oppression, or what is known as the Dark Ages in history, is clear here that it would continue until 1798 AD. Verses 36 and 37 give more identifying marks of the papal power. "And the king shall do according to his will, And he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvellous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. Notice here that the Bible states that the Pope will do according to his will and will exalt himself above every god and also not regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. In the Catholic Encyclopedia, quoting from the Prompta Bibliotheca, which is the Catholic doctrinal book, it states this: "The Pope is of so great dignity and so exalted that he is not a mere man, but as it were God and the vicar of God." Now, what does vicar mean? It means a person who acts in place of another, substitute. In other words, the Pope claims to be a substitute of God. Now, let's continue. The Pope alone is deservedly called by the name Most Holy, because he alone is the vicar of Christ, who is the fountain and source and fullness of all holiness. Now, notice it says the Pope is the vicar or substitute for Christ. Let's read on. He is likewise the divine monarch and supreme emperor and king of kings. Hence the Pope is crowned with a triple crown, a king of heaven and of earth and of the lower regions. Reading on. Moreover, the superiority and the power of the Roman pontiff by no means pertain only to heavenly things, to earthly things, and to things under the earth, but are even over angels than whom he is greater. Notice that this describes the office of the Pope accurately and fits the description of Antichrist, or he who replaces or substitutes as Christ. Another biblical marker is that this power is celibate, as you can see in the verse that states, "nor the desire of women," which describes this power well. The phrase, "till the indignation be accomplished," refers to when the persecution work of this power will end, which we will see in verse 40. Verses 38 and 39 states, "But in his estate shall he honour the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honour with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain." Here the Bible again shows more historical markers. The God of forces or fortresses referred to here, whom his fathers knew not, and he will honour with gold, silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. This refers to the changing of pagan symbols to be Christian and the Catholic traditions of honouring, worshipping statues as well as saints. The strongholds talked about here are the elaborate castle-like churches built. This is where we see the statues are placed and worshipped, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain refers to the persecution, killing, and the taking away of the properties, wealth, and homes of those who stood up against this power, which happened to all those who opposed the papacy. Did this happen? Yes, we find that Catholic scholars acknowledge this. Alfred Baudrillard, rector of the Catholic Institute of Paris, said this: "When confronted by heresy, she does not content herself with persuasion. Arguments of an intellectual and moral order appear to her insufficient, and she has recourse to force, to corporal punishment, to torture. She creates tribunals like those of the Inquisition. She calls the laws of state to her aid. If necessary, she encourages a crusade or a religious war, and all her hour of blood practically culminates into urging the secular power to shed it, which proceeding is almost more odious, for it is less frank than shedding it herself." Here we see that it is acknowledged that it is a church-state power. The phrase, "and he shall divide the land for gain," refers to a conqueror who is dividing the spoil of war. The land and property of all those who were persecuted were given to those who were loyal to the church. Now we go to verse 40, where we are brought to our current time. "And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over." In verse 35 we learn that persecution will continue until the time of the end. Then in verse 40, The phrase, "at the time of the end," signals a significant change. The papal power to persecute God's people comes to an end. A new power, represented by the King of the South, is introduced. When does this power come into play? From previous studies, we know the time of the end refers to 1798, when the papacy loses its power at the hands of the King of the South. To understand this, we look at the prophetic markers God has given. The King of the South pushes at the King of the North, which represents the papacy. The word push comes from the Hebrew nagak, meaning to gore with horns, implying a violent conflict. So who is the King of the South? Historical evidence points to the atheistic power of France. Atheism arose as a reaction against papal doctrine and the dark ages of papal rule in Europe. In 1798, General Berthier captured Pope Pius VI and imprisoned him, leading to his death. This act weakened the papacy, and it has never regained its full power. This event marked the beginning of a struggle between the papacy and atheism, a struggle that continues today. Atheism from France eventually gave rise to the Communist Manifesto, which gives a humanist morality without God, leading to Stalin's regime in Russia, who killed 30 million of his own countrymen, and later communist rule in China by Mao Zedong, who killed almost 100 million people, then followed by the brutal communist dictatorship of North Korea and other nations. These countries embraced atheism and communism as linked ideologies. This shows us the results of where atheistic philosophy leads, in contrast to countries who hold to Christian philosophy. In the West, atheism began influencing the scientific community and, as a result, the social fabric. Charles Lyell was the most prominent and introduced the concept of uniformitarianism, which Darwin later applied to biology, and thus was born the theory of evolution in cosmology, geology, and biology. Over time, these ideas infiltrated universities and academic circles, leading to an effort to separate religion from science. The idea of evolution didn't come from a new groundbreaking scientific discovery. It emerged from the rise of atheistic philosophy, driven by the desire to remove God from everyday life. The problem today is that evolution scientists try to blur the line between operational science, the repeatable kind, and origin science, which is interpretive, non-repeatable, by claiming that science proves evolution is true. But what they're really saying is that they, the scientists, believe evolution is true based on their philosophic interpretation of the evidence. For example, when we find fossils, there's no label on them that says they were created by evolution or by a global flood. These are just interpretations of the data, not hard facts. This will be discussed more in a future episode. Since the 1700s, atheistic ideas have grown in everyday social life, even impacting Christianity. While communism hasn't fully taken hold in the West, partly due to the influence of Christianity, the erosion of faith has allowed atheism to gain traction. Neo-atheism is now prevalent, with college students. As a result, students today are increasingly favoring communism, which is the end result of atheism. Western universities have become hubs for communist ideas, spreading theories like critical race theory, critical class theory, standpoint feminist theory, and woke ideology. All these concepts teach feeling over facts and seek to hide truth from people. These concepts have reached public and private education, being taught to children as young as 5. Students are being taught what to think, not how to think. Former communists who have escaped their countries often share stories of similar indoctrination and philosophies, which they recognize in Western public school and university education. We see that humanism, which is subjective morality, results in communist thinking as an end result. In Christianity, atheistic ideas like evolution and humanism have altered beliefs about Genesis and God. Postmodernist Christian movements, such as the emergent church, merge atheism, evolution, and woke ideology into a distorted version of faith, which emphasizes feelings over truth. All of this aligns with prophecy. But the Bible predicts in the future that the King of the North, the papacy, will confront the King of the South, atheism and secularism, like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. This suggests the papacy will once again rise to become a world power controlling the state. papal philosophies will eventually overpower atheistic philosophy. So what world state power will give state control to the papacy? Hint, it will be a Western power that claims a Christian basis for its government with Roman-style republic governance. We will also see in Revelation chapter 13 where through supernatural manifestations, this will cause a fall of atheism and result in papal control of the world. We now see hints of papal legislative agendas introduced through plans in the United States, like Project 2025, as a reaction to the rise of atheism, communism, and the woke movement. Our current position in prophecy is right here in this verse. What will happen when the papacy regains its power in the near future? Join us next time. That concludes our time together. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this nugget of prophecy. Join us next time as we continue more exciting revelations in Daniel 11, where we will discuss the prophecy of the return of the papacy and the fall of atheism. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you again soon.